Welcome back. We are joined now by Representative Tom McClintock, a Republican of California. He's a member of the Budget Committee. He is the chair of the Judiciary Subcommittee on Immigration, Integrity, Security, and Enforcement. Representative McClintock, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me back.
So the big news of the day, of course, is the budget, the reconciliation bill. Can you give us an update from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, it's got to pass. So, and I think it will. I think every Republican understands it's absolutely essential to get this in place by the summer so that it has a chance to work. You know, the most important economic indicator is the answer that people will give to a very simple question next year. Are you better off today than you were 2 years ago? There's no way to spin the answer to that question. Everybody knows in their own lives how they're doing. And it's if we can get all of this into place by the summer, the tax relief, the major regulatory rollbacks, and hopefully some bilateral free trade agreements, by this time next year we'll be in a period of profound economic expansion, and the vast majority of the Americans will be feeling it in their own lives.
Will there be a vote this week?
Can't read minds, can't tell fortunes, but the vote is still scheduled for Thursday, and I am cautiously optimistic that we'll get there.
You said in a statement last week about the reconciliation bill, quote, if we falter in taking this first step, we can't get to the next one. What do you mean by that? How is this the first step?
Well, this is the reconciliation bill for the fiscal year we're already in. As soon as this is concluded, we are already behind in getting the next budget cycle for fiscal year 26. It starts in September. So you know, from that perspective, we can continue the work that we've started with this budget. That was addressed to some of my colleagues who are seeking absolute perfection in this budget, and I certainly support everything they're trying to do. We don't cut enough spending. We don't come close to balancing the budget. And I happen to believe that the SALT deduction ought to be 100%. So I support what these various groups are trying to obtain. But we need to keep in mind the big picture, and the big picture is that this bill is absolutely essential to revive the economy and to secure our borders and to open up our energy resources and all of the things the president was elected to do.
Now,
so at any rate, it's not perfect, but it's the next step, and we can't get to the 2026 reconciliation until we finish this process.
So let me ask you about the deficit and the national debt. CBO just sent out last night their scoring. They say it will increase the deficit by $2.3 trillion over a decade. They said it would also trigger automatic spending cuts in Medicare and other programs without congressional action. So about the deficit, what's the plan when you say that there needs to be more cuts? Be specific. Where should those cuts come from?
Oh, I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars of grant programs that rob one community to pay for programs that exclusively benefit another. Hundreds of billions of dollars in various subsidies that literally stuff the ballot box that consumers vote in every day with every dollar they spend on what the economy is going to produce and who's going to produce it and what price they're willing to pay for it. I mean, those are two vast areas. DOGE has started to scratch the surface on them, but I think we've got a long way to go. Elon Musk estimated there's about $1 trillion of waste, fraud, and abuse that they expect to uncover within the year. And I think that's a
You think they'll get
number.
to $1 trillion
I think it's entirely
fraud?
Well, when I look at fraud and waste, again, I think virtually all of these subsidies, all of these grants are simple waste. And DOGE has revealed billions of dollars of, I wouldn't even call it waste, I'd call it just sheer theft of public resources. So yeah, there's a lot that still needs to be done. This bill starts us down that path. The other critique I'd make of the CBO is I think they're projecting about 1.8% growth. I think that is extremely low. I think it'll be close to 3%, if we can get solid free trade agreements in place.
Going back to DOGE, the defense budget has increased now to about $1 trillion a year. DOGE hasn't been very active within the defense department, given how large it is, and a lot of people do feel that there is waste. That,
oh, I think
that
there is too. I think there is too. But as Ronald Reagan said, defense is not a budget issue. You spend what you need to spend in order to defend the country. That doesn't excuse the waste that's in that budget. And I do know that DOJ has folks that are, involved in looking at that vast defense budget. That said, we're now spending more on interest on the debt than we are on national defense. That's not sustainable.
Representative Tom McClintock is with us until the end of the program. So if you'd like to speak to him, now's your chance to call in. Lines are by party. Democrats are on 202-748-8000. Republicans are on 202-748-8001. And Independents, 202-748-8002. On Medicaid, Freedom Caucus members want to accelerate work requirements for Medicaid, bringing those up to, I believe, December of 2026. Also change the formula by which the federal government calculates how much they give to states. Are you in favor of those changes?
Yes, I am. The work requirement for able-bodied adults is nothing new. We did that under the Bill Clinton administration. It cut the welfare rolls in half, not just for Medicaid, but for all of the other entitlement programs. That was rolled back during the Obama administration. We need to restore that simple requirement. If you're having trouble, we're going to help you. But if you're an able-bodied adult on Medicaid, we expect that you should be looking for work and accept a job if one's offered, just the way every taxpayer that is paying for this program is doing. And every household spends about $6,900 in their taxes every year just to support Medicaid. I keep hearing that there are going to be cuts in Medicaid. Well, actually, under this budget, the Medicaid spending will go up $168 billion over the next 10 years. So it's not cutting Medicaid, it is slowing the growth of Medicaid, and it's doing that mainly by insisting that able-bodied adults who are on the program look for work, and by removing illegal aliens from these programs.
I mentioned you're the chair of the Judiciary Subcommittee on Immigration, Integrity, Security, and Enforcement. Can you outline for us what the budget increases will be when it comes to immigration and border security?
Basically, it pays for the repatriation of about 1 million illegal immigrants this next year. Remember that over the last 4 years, the Biden administration admitted 8 million illegal aliens into this country, 6 million directly trafficked in by our government, and another 2 million gotaways that came in while the Border Patrol was overwhelmed, taking names and changing diapers at the border. So 8 million. This pays for the repatriation of 1 million, and the priority will be going to criminals. There are about 630,000 illegal immigrants on the non-detained docket. After that, you've got about 1.4 million illegal immigrants who have already had their day in court, have been ordered deported by an immigration judge, and have thumbed their nose at that deportation order. So that's going to keep us busy for quite a while. And also, of course, it funds the completion of the border wall, which the Border Patrol says is absolutely essential as a force multiplier to allow them to do their jobs.
What's the top line number on the funding that will go for immigration enforcement and border security?
Well, I don't recall the exact number, but it is significantly offset because we are increasing fees on a wide number of immigration visas and the like.
This is for legal immigration into the country.
Right, exactly. And just on the basis.
Do you fear that might put it out of reach for a lot of people?
No. I mean, these are fairly nominal amounts for the most part. But Americans should not be paying for programs that benefit a specific class of non-citizens, in this case of people coming to our country legally or illegally.
All right, let's talk to callers. Okay. We'll start with Rick in Nampa, Idaho, Republican. Hi, Rick.
Good morning, Mimi. Rep. McClintock, this is Rick Aitchison, a retired Marine, Nampa, Idaho. There are two valid references I'd like to bring to light, which will posture the Republican Party. And that first reference is CRS Report 40213, April 16, 2019, subject is 480 introduction update. When you go to the last 3 pages, 28, 29, and 30, Appendix A data table, you'll see 1946 to 2017, a total of 71 years of foreign aid. Now, this is money going across the pond, and I broke it down by presidents. The Democratic Party has spent in excess of $2 trillion, and the Republican Party has only spent $901 billion. But out of curiosity, President Trump, he was 29.9 in his first 4 years in office, and I compared that to Democratic President Truman, 46 to 52, 41 billion in 6, 31 billion in 4, Trump 29.9. But between President Bush, Clinton, and George Bush II and President Trump, they spent 428 billion in 24 years. Now let's compare Barack Obama.
So Rick, it's a lot of numbers to keep track of. Is your bottom line about Representative McClintock's take on foreign aid or foreign support, military aid?
Well, comes down to budgeting. Okay, so now we're dealing with doctors and dreamers coming across the line, $7 million a week. We the people paid for that. Refugees, we're paying $3,032 a month per person coming into the U.S. and plus your illegal immigrants coming in. So the bottom line is, yeah, we have a budget, and the Republican parties are spot on, but I'd like you to bring these references to light to posture the Republican Party. With that in mind, thanks for your time, your hospitality. C-SPAN Rep McClintock, you have my support, and I hold for your remarks. Thank you.
Well, appreciate that. Thank you. The only thing I'd add is that just the illegal immigrants that were admitted by the Biden administration are costing American taxpayers about $160 billion a year to support. And again, as we roll that back, we'll see considerable savings in those funds.
A caller in our previous segment in Open Forum brought up the aid that we're sending to Israel for military aid, and he was against that. What's your response to that?
Well, I support the military aid to Israel. I supported military aid to Ukraine. I think it was important that we send a very clear message that aggression around the world will not be tolerated. Israel was attacked by Hamas on October 7th in one of the most brutal and barbaric acts in human history. Israel deserves our full support, and the only way to resolve that is the unconditional surrender of Hamas.
Let's talk to Sam, who is in Lithonia, Georgia, independent line. Hi, Sam.
Good morning.
Morning. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to know if Social Security tax exemptions are going to be in the bill. I've heard from the news agencies that he's considering no tax on Social Security. Is that in the bill?
Sort of. The reconciliation bill does not allow any adjustments to Social Security, but as I understand it, they're going to be increasing the standard deduction for seniors over the age of 70 by, I believe it's $4,000 per person. I might have that wrong, maybe 2,000, but somewhere in the 2,000 to 4,000 range. So that is designed to essentially mimic the proposal not to tax Social Security benefits. It'll go a long way to achieving that. And then I think you'll see probably a standalone bill at some point in the future introduced that will actually shield Social Security earnings from the federal income tax.
Sam, you had another point?
That was basically it. Yeah, I'm for all of the cuts that DOGE is doing. I'd like to see that continue. Oversight on the military spending has been a problem for 30 or 40 years, where the contractors are able to come in and then raise the original budget by adding more stuff to it. And that's been going on since NASA days. I worked at NASA in the early days. I'm 77 years old now. And that's been going on.
All right. And this is Randy, Fairport, New York, Democrat. Good morning, Randy.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I'd like to ask the Congress, I'm at the end of the baby boom generation on disability and Social Security, Medicare. And it sounds like what I heard just reported, to the size of the deficit that's associated with the billionaire tax break, that there's going to be automatic cuts in Social Medicare. I'd like to see an answer to that. Why are we cutting Medicare now? We just talked about Medicaid. Now we're talking about automatic cuts in Medicare because of this.
Randy, you don't have a very good line, but I think we got what you were talking about, automatic cuts to Medicare.
Yeah, Randy, I honestly don't know what you're talking about. Social Security, again, cannot be affected by the reconciliation bill. The question is over slowing the growth of the increase in Medicaid programs, which have grown, basically doubled in the last 10 years. I'm not aware of any changes to Medicare in the bill either. You're absolutely right. The deficit is a serious problem, but that is driven by spending. You want to know everything there is to know about the federal budget. You just need to know three numbers: 46, 64, and 94. 46% is the increase of inflation in population over the last 10 years. 46%. 64% is the increase in revenues in the same period. And that includes the original Trump tax cuts. We actually are bringing in 64% more revenue with only 46% increase of inflation and population. The third number is what's killing us. 94% is the increase in spending in the same period. So if you want to put all of this into four simple words, it's the spending stupid.
Representative McClintock, the president had kind of floated the idea of increasing the highest tax rate on millionaires, so those making over $2.5 million a year. Would you be in favor of that? Would you?
No, and don't forget that a lot of that applies to small businesses. It's the marginal tax rate that is the growth factor. And it's absolutely essential that we do everything we can in the tax code to promote economic growth. That's the only way we're going to get out of a deficit out of a debt this size. No, I don't support increasing the marginal rates. I support restraining the spending. Again, once we spend $1, there's only three ways to pay for that. You either tax it right now, which reduces your current productivity. You borrow it now, which reduces your future productivity, runs up huge interest costs, and crowds out capital that could otherwise be used for businesses to expand or for consumers to make consumer purchases. Or you run the printing presses and inflate the dollar. Those are the only three ways to pay for spending. The spending is the root of our problems, and it's completely out of control. This bill begins to bring it back under control.
Constance in Las Vegas sent us a text. She says, Representative McClintock has not addressed the waste of taxpayer dollars on Trump's weekly golf outings and his ego-stroking parade using the same military that he refused to join and serve. Why is that okay?
Well, I certainly support the president's efforts to rekindle patriotism in our country. And I have never gainsaid security for any president, Democrat or Republican. This president particularly requires security. We've had two near-fatal assassination attempts on his life just in the last year. We've got an FBI director who's certainly making very provocative posts on the internet. At the budget hearing on Friday, there was a little girl in the audience, but it couldn't have been more than 12 years old. She had a sweatshirt, and on the sweatshirt it said, "Free Luigi," the accused assassin of the insurance CEO. There is something very, very wrong that's going on in our society, and I would never begrudge the security that our president needs to assure that the will of the people as expressed in this election is carried out.
And the plane from Qatar, are you in favor of accepting that as a gift or not?
I think it's a very bad look. I understand what the president's saying. A government offers $400 billion or $400 million to the American government. The appropriate thing to say is thank you. And I understand that he's probably also trolling Boeing because Boeing's way behind in delivering Air Force One. So I understand all that. But I think it's a bad look, and I wish he wouldn't.
All right, let's go to Patricia in Circleville, Ohio, Republican line. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Representative McClintock. I have a question. When all of the illegals came in to our southern northern borders, no one paid any attention or did any vetting of them. However, why are the Democrats so incensed about taking care of them on the other end when they broke the law in the first place. If anyone could explain that to me, I would love it, because it makes no sense financially or with the people here in our country. Thank you very much.
I certainly agree with you. Without enforcing our immigration laws, we have no immigration laws. If we have no immigration laws, we have no border. And if we have no border, we have no country. And for 4 years, the Democrats deliberately opened our borders to the world, brought in 8 million illegal immigrants, and as you said, about whom we know very little, if anything. Among them were the most violent criminal gangs and cartels on the planet that this administration is now trying to get removed from our country, and the Democrats are fighting them tooth and nail. I don't understand that either. I think there are a lot of Democrats who no longer understand where their party is going on these issues. But it's very clear it's a deliberate policy.
Here's Mike in Littleton, Colorado, independent line. Hi, Mike.
Yeah, I was wanting to know, he talks about waste, fraud, all of this. What's he going to do about the military contractors that are building us equipment and that we are paying for to do the research, like the F-35, right? We can't work. Once we get these F-35s in, we can't work on them. They extort us to do maintenance on those planes that we paid to research to do, right? When you say that there's waste and fraud and all of this, you have a military budget that is half of our budget, and you don't want to go in there and clean that up, but you want to take things that help regular Americans out, like Medicaid. You want to cut that? Well, that is outrageous.
Well, first of all,
obviously your donors must be the people, the Lockheeds, the Boeings, the Raytheons. Those must be your donors if you're not willing to take on what is exploding our budget, and that's the military budget.
All right, Mike, let's get a response.
The military budget's about $1 trillion out of $7 trillion of federal spending. So, first of all, your numbers are wrong. Secondly, I agree with you. There is enormous waste in the defense budget, and there's no excuse for it. And DOGE has been outlining some of that. There have been, you just look at the top-heavy staffing at the Pentagon. You begin to see just oceans of waste, and that does need to be addressed. So I don't disagree with you on those points. But I'll get back to the point I raised earlier that Ronald Reagan used to point out, that the defense is not a budget issue. You spend what you need to spend to defend the country.
Let's talk to Joyce in Minnesota, line for Democrats. Hi, Joyce.
Hi. I would like to know why we are spending a huge sum on a military parade for the president's birthday when the military cannot balance their budget and come up with a true audit of their spending.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can't entirely disagree with you on that. Again, as I said, I support the president's efforts to rekindle patriotism. I think that this is one part of that, but I do think we need to be sensitive of the costs and the appearance of the costs.
You alluded to trade negotiations earlier. Your view of President Trump's tariff policies?
Look, tariffs hurt any country that imposes them. That's been true down through history, and ours is no different. The only excuse for them is to leverage trading partners to reduce their trade barriers. And I'm certainly very hopeful that that is where the president is taking us. The agreement with the UK is a step in the right direction. It's not free trade, but it is at least freer trade. If that is followed by a series of bilateral trade agreements with other countries, I think that's going to justify the president's use of tariffs to reach that point. But we need to be very clear. Tariffs do not help any country that imposes them. Tariffs, let me put it this way. If we get really mad at a country and want to hurt them without actually bombing them, what do? We impose economic sanctions, right? What are economic sanctions? They're impediments against that country's ability to import products. What are tariffs? Tariffs are impediments to our country's ability to import products. Why would we do to ourselves something we only save for our worst enemies? They make no sense at all. Look, if it costs $1 to make a widget in Canada and $2 in America, it makes sense to buy widgets from Canada. If we slap $1 a widget tax on Canadian products in order to level the playing field, we've just cut our supply of widgets in half. That's creating scarcity from abundance. That is self-destructive. You know, it's true. The steel tariffs probably save about 160,000 steel jobs in the United States. But let's remember that comes at the expense of the 6.8 million Americans who are employed by manufacturers who use steel in their products. The increase in the steel prices hurt all of those employees and the manufacturers they work for.
Who has the authority to levy tariffs?
Ultimately, it's Congress. Ultimately, it's Congress. Unfortunately,
so what are the Republicans doing in Congress to take back that authority?
Congress has ceded that much of that authority to the president. At the moment, I'm not ready to set my hair on fire over it because, as I said, I think he's using this as leverage to get the free trade agreements we need to not only help our economy, but also help the world economy. As long as he's moving in that direction, like I said, I'm not ready to set my hair on fire. If we don't see more of those within the next few months, well, then maybe we need to change course.
Here's James in Akron, Ohio, Independent Line. Hi, James.
Yes, I have a question. I don't understand. Well, I do understand because I know it benefits the wealthy, and the wealthy runs everything. But why can't the wealthy people pay the same percentage of taxes that the poor pay? If you make under $170,000, your tax rate is higher than the people that make more. And you say, well, those people pay more in the taxes. Well, we pay everything that we have in the taxes. So they should pay every dime that they get, they should pay the same tax rate all the way through.
You're talking about a flat tax. I couldn't agree with you more. That's exactly right. Everybody should pay the same percentage of their income. However, I do have to point out that in very rough numbers, the top 1% of Americans pay, or they make 20% of the income in this country. They also pay 40% of the income taxes. And the reconciliation bill and the tax provisions in that bill that are before us right now are largely aimed at working and middle class voters. No tax on tips. Billionaires don't work for tips. No tax on overtime. Billionaires aren't paid on overtime. And although it's not quite a exemption on Social Security income from income taxes, it basically mimics that with the device that we spoke about earlier. So all of those, just put it in very clear terms, if this bill does not go through, an average American is going to see their taxes rise about $1,700 next year. About a 22% increase in income taxes. That takes effect at the end of this year if we don't get this bill through and signed into law. That's the bottom line in all of this.
Tony is an independent in Martinsburg, West Virginia. Good morning, Tony.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Hey, you all talk about bringing down the deficit and everything, but the deficit has been going up since the Reagan era. The Republicans
it goes back farther than that.
Tax cuts are the most important thing to them. And I don't know why we can't do something about that.
Well, again, spending cuts are the most important thing. Because taxes are driven by spending. Debt is driven by spending. Inflation is driven by spending. Spending is the problem. But, you go back to the only other time in our history when our debt was as large as it is today relative to GDP was at the very end of World War II, when we had exhausted all of our resources fighting the most horrible war in human history. How did we get out of that? People forget Harry Truman cut the federal budget from $85 billion down to $30 billion in a single year.